Today's lecture is about associating, which is one of the 5 qualities of the innovator's DNA. And I really love associating, which you could define as drawing connections between questions, problems, or ideas from unrelated fields. I love it because it feels to me often like you're able to come up with ideas out of thin air. Or if it's not thin air, you're at least able to come up with ideas just from the things that are around you. And this is something you could do in your personal life, but even more so, it's something that has truly affected our culture for centuries. Like, take this one. An invention that came about because someone associated a coin punch with a wine press. So a coin punch is this, you can see these images of them, and they're used to transfer the sort of raised image of a coin, the heads or the tails from a coin, onto a sheet of metal. And that's done by putting them in the right spot and pressing down with enough force, and then you get the imprint left behind of the coin. And if you combine those movable, reusable metal pieces that can be arranged, you combine that with a wine press, and it's a picture of a wine press on the other side, and you can imagine that screw being turned and something descending and pressing, maybe not a metal sheet, but what if it's a piece of paper? And what if instead of being imprinted with the shape from the metal, what if you have rolled out some ink on that metal? And you've got the printing press. And that actually is the case, that the coin punch and the wine press were put together to say, aha, there's a way that we could print many, many, many sheets of the same page. We don't have to have our books copied by monks in monasteries by hand, drawing kind of amazing pictures in the margins. They're worth looking up. The snails in illuminated books. If you haven't looked them up before, they're worth seeing. But instead, we got the printing press, which let us have reading materials widely available enough that A, they could be available for all people, not just rich people or people with access to a monastery's library, and B, that could be common enough that they would have content beyond very elevated, very special content. And that takes us to our next invention that we got from associating. You could put together African wildlife and Hamlet. And if you put those things together, you actually will get The Lion King, or at least the writers and producers at Disney put those things together to get The Lion King. Lion King was actually originally meant to be Bambi on the African savannah, but it just wasn't working. And so, they had brainstorming sessions like the ones that you've been having with your teams, scratching their heads, trying to come up with new ideas, trying to, not be critical. And one of them finally, asked a screenwriter, hey, what have you been reading lately? Maybe that could give us an idea. It's better than Bambi on the Savannah. And he said, I've been reading King Lear. And I don't think that will work for this project. But what if we did Hamlet? We want to tell this coming of age story. We want a character who's going to have adventures, but then come back and take responsibility. And that's all what Hamlet's about. And we could just do it with lions instead of Hamlet and his father, and with, a meerkat and a warthog, and the savannah instead of cold Denmark. So that is how we got The Lion King. And combining Shakespeare with a different setting is a tried and true associating technique. I cannot count the number of books and movies that we've gotten that combine Hamlet or King Lear or Romeo and Juliet or Midsummer's Night's Dream or any of his plays with another setting to make something new and make something special and something that will appeal to a new generation. Okay, here's another one. Peanut butter and sliced deli meat. Okay, this one, they're not all good ideas. The peanut butter and sliced deli meat was from someone who didn't like when they made their kids lunches to pack their lunch. They didn't like how the knife and the peanut butter would sort of tear into the bread. Maybe you've experienced this problem. And so they spread peanut butter onto parchment paper and then in, thin layers in the shape of bread. And then they'd put that in the freezer. And then in the morning before school, they'd just take out a slice of peanut butter and put it on the bread and send them on their way. You may have seen the video for this. It's another one I recommend. It's kind of amazing. But it's amazing because this is not actually a good idea. You may have gotten there before me. You may have raised the eyebrow or rolled your eyes at the idea of sliced peanut butter as an example of association. But here's the thing. Association on its own isn't enough to necessarily give you a great idea or even a great problem to solve. And that is because, like any idea generating process, it's about coming up with lots of ideas. They had to come up with Bambi on the Savannah and King Lear on the Savannah and I don't know, motorcycle gangs on the Savannah or whatever else they came up with. They then filtered those and said Hamlet on the Savannah is the one we're going to do. And just the same way you might filter peanut butter slices out of your list of good ideas. And it's really valuable to think about why. Why is that one filtered out? And in my opinion, it's because they weren't solving an authentic problem. Messing up the inside of the bread for your sandwich a little bit, it's just not a big enough deal to warrant all of the extra work of making peanut butter slices at home. Or there was actually a product that tried to sell peanut butter slices kind of like cheese slices. But again, it wasn't worth the extra expense, all that plastic. It just didn't work. So you've got to generate a lot of ideas and then filter. And a really strong filter is to ask, is this solving an authentic problem? Is this a problem someone really cares about enough to go out of their way and spend the money to use your mashup solution? So I've got a few solutions. This is from an article in Wired magazine. I want to give credit to them, of mashup solutions. And so just think to yourself for each one. Does this pass the bar for me? Would I consider this an authentic problem in my life? Or if not, do I know someone or could I imagine someone for whom this is truly an authentic solution? Here's the first one. A steering wheel tray table that you can use to eat at the wheel or to, do your taxes at the wheel. I gotta say, my first response on this is, I don't think so. Because most of the time that I'm in my car, I'm driving. And that looks super dangerous to have in my lap. And, the first time I turn the wheel, if I'm lucky, I'm just spilling my fries and my Coke. If I'm unlucky, I'm spilling a McDonald's boiling hot coffee in my lap. But then, I have to say, I think a little bit longer. And my brother's a truck driver. And he spends all kinds of time in his truck. And so if I were evaluating this for real, my first thing would be to call my brother and ask him, hey, is this solving a real problem for you. And think about other people who might have to spend a lot of times in their car. Like maybe this is a great product for police who are going to have to be on stakeout. Or I don't know, someone, this is where your brainstorming comes in. Think about who else might use it. But for me, it does not pass the test. How about this next one? You've got a spork, but what's missing from a spork? A knife is missing. So what if you had this two-sided version with the spoon on one end, the fork on the other end, and the knife right on the side? What do you think? Decide for yourself. Is this an improvement? Does it meet an authentic need that's not being met in another way? Then there is this one. One of my favorites. It's kind of hilarious, but don't you wish that you had a cup holder that you could attach anywhere? I thought it was all kind of frivolous until a friend of mine hurt their ankle and needed crutches. And one of the things that they said was that it was really surprising to them how hard it was to have crutches and not be able to carry anything, carry their laptop, carry their coffee, much harder than they expected. So this one might be truly important for some people. So what I say is, when using this creative process, associate broadly, associate wildly, associate things that you might never put together, even ones that you have to generate randomly in order to come up with it. And then evaluate. Just like lots of creativity tools. It's one of those things where you open wide and uncritically, and then take a moment and say, okay, which of these ideas do we really want to carry forward? You're going to see that pattern coming up a lot. I hope you get used to working in that pattern. It's very effective for coming up with new ideas. And if you get stuck, here are a bunch of tools that you could try. And I want to give credit. These are from the MIT Executive Management Program. If you want to dive in more, use the URL that's there at the bottom of the slide. But try one of these tools. For example, the forcing associations one. Just pick up anything that you find around you. A dictionary could work. A catalog could work. A magazine or a book could work. And flip to a random page, say page 27. And close your eyes. Drop your finger down on the page, pointing at something, and say, okay. I just got a thing that says fickle sun. How could the sun be part of the solution? How could the idea of being fickle, which is not being loyal, but flipping back and forth between things, how could that open up new ideas? Or whatever it is that you turn to should be able to do that. Another one is to take on the persona of another company. There's an advertising agency, TBWA, that actually gets uniforms from another company for their staff to wear for a day. And they're supposed to put everything they're normally working on aside and then spend the whole day as if they're working for Apple or Google or Virgin, and use that to say, not how would we solve this problem, how would I solve this problem, but if I were working for Virgin Records or Virgin Airlines or any part of that company, how would I tackle this? And that is the goal, of course, is to practice looking at the challenges you face from an entirely different perspective. Set aside the things that you think you know about it in order to find new potential solutions. You also could have a metaphor that you use to push your idea around. What if your product could be more like reading from an iPad? Or what if your service could be more like ordering coffee at Starbucks? Analogies and metaphors hold the potential for seeing things from a different perspective, opening the door for you to see new things. You might hear my cat in the background. She tries to sound like she's dying. She's fine. You could build a physical set of prompts. You could call it a curiosity box, and just random things. Pull something out of it and say, okay, what if this thing had the solution to the problem? And just let yourself associate. Like, I've got a river pebble on my desk. It's smooth. It's cold to the touch. How could those qualities inform finding or solving a new problem? The company IDEO takes this so seriously that they have curiosity boxes at all of their global headquarters. And there's a requirement that if you add something to your curiosity box in Singapore, you get enough of them that it can be added to all of the curiosity boxes that the company has around the world. So that's an example of taking them seriously, and I think they're worth it. Then finally, scamper. This fifth tip is taken from Alex Osborne and Bob Eberle's acronym for Insight, and they're a little fast and loose with acronyms. I am a little stricter, but I will go with what they came up with. And it stands for substitute, combine, adapt, magnify, minimize, and modify. So you can go through each of those ideas in order and say, okay, what if we substituted for a part of the thing that we're setting up? Or what if we magnify and make this thing huge? Or if we zoom in really close? And all of those are ways to jar your thinking, to see it from new perspectives, to make new associations in order to come up with good solutions and, even more valuably, good problems. Okay, go forth, use this. You'll need it for your design fiction phase 2 project and for the rest of your work. Thanks and see you later.